Part 80. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 793. Although the composition of this army is very good, due to the special system of the Song dynasty, although the number of people was large, it was useless. For various reasons, the Song dynasty conscripted troops every year, but no troops were used after each conscription. If these soldiers cannot be used, then they will have nowhere to go and can only stay in the military camp and waste their lives. Looking at the feudal dynasties, the Song dynasty was the richest and special dynasty among all dynasties, so they were not short of money to support these soldiers. This also resulted in many soldiers staying in designated military camps for a long time, but they had never been to a battlefield. They just wore a suit of armor and pretended to be a facade. The Jingzhou Guards currently on their way was established in the name of protecting Yingtian Mansion, but in fact this important task lies with the Forbidden Army, and the Jingzhou Guards suddenly seemed a bit redundant. In order to show that they are useful, the Forbidden Army is very proactive in everything, and deliberately does not arrange for escorts. Over time, this army will be of no use and can only stay in the military camp. All Lu Feng has to do now is to go to the military camp of this army in person to retrain these Song soldiers with very good foundation. In just a few months, they can be trained into elite soldiers. The method used is of course the same as the previous method. They are trained in batches, and then the useful people are pulled out individually to form groups. Each group has its own tasks, and the most powerful people among them serve as the group captain. These soldiers are trained in a very scientific way, and the training content every day is only a lot more. The training is completely in accordance with the training system of modern special forces, which can be described as a very hellish model. With the plan in mind, Lu Feng walked faster. It didn't take long for him to arrive at the entrance of the military camp. The entrances to these military camps were all temporary sentries built with wood. Every time, there are more than 10 soldiers standing on the sentry post responsible for keeping watch. However, when Lu Feng came here, he realized that more than half of the people above were sleeping, and no one really meant to stand guard. They were derelict in their duties only because this place was still near Yingtian Mansion. If it were a battlefield, they would have become corpses without warmth. Lu Feng didn't speak, he just pointed at the few people on the sentry post. Huang Zhong, who had already drawn his bow and set up behind him, certainly understood what he meant. I saw a few arrows hit the armor of several soldiers on the sentry with lightning speed, penetrated their armor, and pinned several of them to the wooden stakes. This arrow technique was simply miraculous. Without hurting these soldiers, it nailed them to the wooden stakes and even penetrated their armor. Ah! Several soldiers who were shot screamed. Where had they ever encountered such a battle? They thought they were going to die after being attacked by the enemy, so they quickly checked their wounds. But they soon discovered that they were not injured. The body did not feel any pain, but they could not leave the wooden pile no matter what, they could only stare blankly at the arrows on their chests and were at a loss. This can be regarded as Lu Feng's disgrace when he came here. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 794. The screams of these soldiers also woke up other sleeping soldiers. They immediately got up and looked around to see what was going on, but they saw nothing. They only saw 53 people in front of them. There were 3 people riding tall horses at the front. They looked very unhappy with their cold expressions. Their eyes seemed to be capable of killing people, so they did not dare to look at each other. Behind these 3 people, 50 people wearing exactly the same costumes stood neatly. Whether looking horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, they were all on the same line. The military discipline was strict, and you could tell at a glance that they were on the same line. Just a very powerful army. They stood behind in silence, like javelins standing upright. Without the order of the commander in front, they would not move even if something fell on them. Seeing such an army, the soldiers who were on sentry were also stunned. These people knew at a glance that they were Han people, which meant that they were our own people. Then the soldiers didn't understand, why would our own people attack our own people? Which military camp are you from? What is the number? Who is the commander? Why do you come to us to shoot arrows? Do you know that this will hurt your own people? The soldiers on guard pointed at them and yelled. You must know that these are real weapons. Once shot in the head, you will die. I have an imperial edict here and ask your people to come out and receive it. Lu Feng nodded, and Guan Yu walked out from behind him, holding the imperial edict he had just taken from the court, and raised it high to show it to the soldiers on guard. The soldiers on guard immediately panicked. They knew the imperial edict. This kind of thing is not a joke. He rolled down from the sentry post with urine on his butt, and kept beating the gong on the side. Clang! Clang! Dang, dang, dang. There is a pattern from rapid to slow. By striking different notes of the gong, you can tell the brothers in the military camp what it means, and the one you are beating now means that everyone has gathered. This is also telling the other brothers in the military camp what is happening. It was a big deal, and everyone had to come out to solve it. But even if there was such a gong sounding to remind other people in the military camp, Lu Feng still waited outside for half an hour. After half an hour, from now on the generals and soldiers, who had barely put on their clothes, finally came out, and they lined up very lazily at the front. This so-called army is now no different from a group of rabble. Everyone is gathered together despite the situation. They still did not stand in line, let alone stand in a square formation. They simply stood in an endless and irregular shape. Obviously they were soldiers who had been in the army for many years, but they seemed not to know that there were people in this world. With the word queuing up, everyone casually found an open space to stand even if Lu Feng was in front of them. They didn't realize that they should behave themselves. There were even a few who went too far. I don't know when he took the girl to the military camp, talked and laughed with the girls, and walked out. He did not take the military camp seriously at all, nor did he take military discipline seriously. Lu Feng seriously thought that these people might need to spend some time, let them know what are the three fires when a new official takes office, and they may not be able to survive the first fire. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 795. Lu Feng looked at the sloppy soldiers coldly. What he had to do next was to return these sloppy soldiers to their original appearance and make them stronger than before. In vain, these people were originally from the Forbidden Army, but looking at their current appearance, how can they compare with today's march? Even compared with farmers, other people's farmers have more temperament than them. The edict has arrived. Everyone knelt down to receive the order. Guan Yu roared with anger, making the lax soldiers finally realize why they were called out alone. Only then did they realize the seriousness of the matter, and a large area fell to their knees. From today on, all of you will be under the control of General Ping Chuan in front of you. All the soldiers and horses in the world will be at his disposal. Other armies will arrive on the outskirts of Beijing within a month and join you, and you will serve as local garrison. The army will start training today and start training every morning. No one can be left behind. Lu Feng nodded, and Guan Yu continued to speak to these soldiers. Let these soldiers understand that Lu Feng came here with the imperial edict. They don't need to know Lu Feng, but they must know the imperial edict. They must know that this is the emperor means that the person they are loyal to now is still the emperor. But they should not forget that in addition to the emperor's imperial edict, they must unconditionally obey Lu Feng's orders. Lu Feng's orders are military orders. If anyone does not obey military orders, they will be severely punished. And all the soldiers and horses in the world will obey Lu Feng's orders. It's just that the other troops are not in the suburbs of Beijing, so those troops have to wait until a month later to gather here. After all the troops and horses gather, Lu Feng will bring all the troops. The army will attack the Jin Kingdom and Mongolia. Before that, this army stationed on the outskirts of Beijing will be put into training immediately, not to mention that their number is 50,000, which is enough. If it were not for the reason of going to attack the Jin Kingdom and Mongolia, these two big countries, you do not need to prepare hundreds of thousands of soldiers. You can attack a small country with only 50,000. But again, this is also a shortcoming of the Song dynasty. There are very many soldiers and a large population. It is developing rapidly and everyone lives and works in peace and contentment, so they will die in peace and contentment. After Guan Yu's words came out, these soldiers whispered to each other, as if they did not take the generals in front of them seriously, and they each began to discuss privately. Even the emperors, the imperial edict can only be taken care of for a short time when it comes to them, and it cannot be taken care of for a long time. They started to mind their own business, whispering, and seemed to have objections to the arrival of Lu Feng and the others. No more arguing. Orders are orders. Anyone who violates military orders in the future will be dealt with according to military orders. The Qinglongyanyu sword in Guan Yu's hand hit the ground with a clang, and the power in it was really scary. This is Guan Yu. Martial saint. He was very imposing, just standing there, scaring those around him. Several people did not dare to move. They could only lower their heads and kneel in front, not daring to do anything. Young master is used to being undisciplined. If he wants to teach better, I am afraid it cannot be solved in a day or two. It may take more time than young master in other places. Huang Zhong said quietly behind Lu Feng, this is his opinion. Three Kingdoms, I have a job transfer palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 796. Of course Lu Feng knew what Huang Zhong meant. Although the group of people in front of him was not mud now, it was almost like mud. Whether they could reach the wall depended on whether they could pass through Lu Feng devil training. Everyone, stand up for me now. From today on, I will command you here. Don't even think about going out to fool around anymore. The military camp is the only place where you can stay alive. Lu Feng severely rebuked these soldiers and asked them to change their moral character. If they are still like this in the future, he will never let these soldiers go. I don't understand what General Ping Chuan said. Even when we are not under your control, we still have 3 full days off a month. We can play outside as we like. Why do you come and we don't even have a vacation? There is always a shortage of thorns in the army. There was a man who was not wearing any armor and was wearing his own civilian clothes. He held his head high and asked Lu Feng why the rules would be changed. If you are not wearing the military uniform in this military camp, then you are not a member of this military camp. Entering and exiting the military camp without authorization is a violation of military regulations to spy on military secrets. Come on, drag me down and behead you. Lu Feng is really hoping that someone will take the initiative to stir up trouble now. As long as someone dares to come out without authorization, then he will definitely treat this person as a chicken to scare the monkeys and show the good looks of these soldiers. However, his order is not at all for these soldiers. Even though it was not a strict order, these people laughed loudly. They all felt that Lu Feng was simply telling a joke. I'm afraid the general has some misunderstanding about us. Our last general has now become the deputy commander of the Forbidden Army. We are his brothers. You can't order us yet. If your majesty wants to fight, it won't happen in a day or two. Yeah, I never took it seriously. You'd better go home and wash up and sleep as soon as possible. Maybe the imperial edict will be withdrawn tomorrow. The soldiers below burst into laughter. They did not believe that this imperial edict had a lasting effect. After all, the Song dynasty had always talked about war, but had never actually led troops to fight. Every time the other party fought when they come over, they will definitely fail, and the people from Yingtian Mansion will tell His Majesty to fight back. The result is that His Majesty the Emperor issued an order to assemble the army, but the army may not have been assembled for a day before ordering to disperse. The order was changed at night, and for the entire Song dynasty it is not a rare thing to say, and even many soldiers have become accustomed to it. How can anyone believe that the imperial edict brought this time is really to go out to fight? Lu Feng saw that these people did not take this edict at all. He simply threw this imperial edict aside, and now he was going to use his own methods to manage these people. He pointed at the most thorny soldier and said nothing. The Song soldiers looked at him and still didn't understand that he was what does it mean, but Guan Yu and Huang Zhong behind Lu Feng understood it. Without saying a word, the two of them stepped forward and grabbed the nitpicking soldier, one on the left and the other on the right. "What do you want to do? I warn you, don't touch me, otherwise you won't be able to bear my anger." This man was obviously a little unconvinced. Why was he suddenly lifted up out of thin air? The feeling of his feet leaving the ground made him feel dangerous and he was shaking unconsciously. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 797. Huang Zhong and Guan Yu were under Lu Feng's orders. They didn't care at all what others said. The two of them arrested the fussy soldier, took him to the other side, and chopped off his head in front of everyone. Did not give him a chance to regret, nor gave him a chance to speak. Decisive and resolute. The behavior of these two men certainly irritated the other soldiers. They were all very surprised. How could someone kill someone just after arriving in the military camp? And he was very decisive, without any hesitation, but it was precisely because he cut off this man's head that the other soldiers became quiet at this moment, and finally stopped whispering. They all looked at Lu Liufeng, Huang Zhong, and Guan Yu in surprise and uncertainty, becoming more and more uncertain about what was going on with these three people. But just now they took out the imperial edict, so they didn't dare to stand up and go against these three people. Although you came here with an imperial edict, you just came here as our leader and killed people casually without reporting anything to His Majesty. Isn't this against the rules? At this time, a man with a mustache stood up. Judging from his clothes, he should be a general of high rank. He also had a little bit of cultural knowledge. He pointed at his brother who had lost his head and asked, "Lu Feng, if they want to kill people, they must obtain His Majesty's consent. If they deal with the brothers in the military camp without permission, others may not agree. There is no need to ask Your Majesty the Emperor about anything I do or say. If you are not convinced, you can go to the King of Hell with your brother and ask why." Lu Feng looked at him indifferently. How could he need Song Litsong's opinion on what he was doing? He was the emperor of another world, and even Song Litsong was just an unworthy emperor in front of him. Now he has with military power, he no longer cares what Song Litsong thinks. From now on, these soldiers are just his subordinates. If he orders these people to go east, these people must not go west. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. Basically, there is no need to write a memorial to Song Litsong and ask him if he can kill people. Such idiotic behavior does not apply to Lu Feng. You must know that the person you just killed is called Wei Lankai. This person is the youngest son of General Wei. He is the thinnest because the general loves you. This will offend others. This high-ranking general laughed angrily. In his eyes, Lu Feng's behavior was reckless, and he dared to offend even the generals in the court. You must know that the general he just mentioned was a second-rank general. Among military generals, this is already the highest position. According to the rules of the Song dynasty, civil servants have a first-grade prime minister, while military generals can only have a second-grade prime minister. Only when the army gathers to fight abroad, a person who is designated as a generalissimo can have a first-grade prime minister. However, when the war is over, the fictitious position of the generalissimo will be cancelled. This is also the purpose of the Song dynasty emperor, to tell those generals that civil servants will always be one family higher than you, and don't think of treason casually. But the emperor is afraid of his hands. The generals who have military power want to use wenching to contain them. The most common emperor's method is nothing special. I'll give you time to call General Wei here. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 798. Lu Feng looked at this man and didn't say anything nonsense to him. He just gave him a chance to call this general who thought he was very powerful. Since General Wei is a second-grade general, he will definitely go to court. When he goes to court, everyone has already convinced Guan Yu, but he wants to see if he will really go against him because of the death of a son. You really don't know how to live or die. If you wait for me here, I will definitely bring General Wei here. When the time comes, you will know their anger and you will not be able to bear it. The man was so angry that he roared, took out a war horse from the military camp, and immediately went to serve as a servant to deliver the information. Watching him go away, Lu Feng did not let anyone stop him. It happened that you can also make use of the coming General Wei to establish your authority in the military camp. For a moment, the entire venue was silent, and everyone seemed to be waiting for a result. In one stick of incense, the General Wei followed that person back. Got it. Lin Fuxi, you said my son is dead, what happened? How could he die if he was staying well in the suburbs of Beijing? General Wei was riding a horse, with Lin Fuxi right behind him. It seemed that he had already talked about the death of his son before, but it could be heard from General Wei's words that Lin Fuxi did not explain everything. General Wei, look at the man in front of you, he is the one who killed your son. Slowly, as they approached, Lin Fuxi pointed at Lu Feng, with a firm and resentful tone that made people doubt that the man who had just died was actually his son. Lin Fuxi held his head high, thinking that Lu Feng was dead. Just waiting for General Wei to deal with him, other soldiers watching the show also felt that Lu Feng would not end well. After all, if he put himself in his shoes, if his son was killed, then he would definitely do it for his son. Revenge. But these people did not wait for the outcome they imagined. Instead, General Wei immediately got off his horse and knelt in front of Lu Feng in front of everyone. At the end of the day, the general will pay homage to General Ping Chuan, General Guan, and General Huang. General Wei is from the early dynasty, so of course he knows Lu Feng, as well as Guan Yu and Huang Zhong behind him. He admires these three people from the bottom of his heart. You must know that. Guan Yu proved it in front of everyone. His own strength told them in front of these generals who was the real strong one. For such a powerful person, even General Wei, who had been promoted to the second rank, was willing to be defeated. He did not expect Lin Fuxi to call him over. To face such three generals, at this moment, he did not have any doubts about his son's death, but felt a little overwhelmed. General Wei came here to ask me why I wanted to kill your son. Lu Feng asked him straight to the point. I think there must be some misunderstanding. Lin Fuxi is not usually a person who is content with the status quo. I think he must be hiding something from me. I will not believe that he is confusing right and wrong. Please rest assured, General. General Wei is also a smart man. At this time, he did not mention a word about the death of his son, nor did he mention whether he held a grudge. He blamed all the sins on Lin Fuxi. He made it clear that he only wanted to. Your attitude of saying yes and having no problem is obviously favoring Lu Feng. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 799. General Wei's attitude shocked the surrounding soldiers. They thought that General Wei had a high position and it was not a problem to kill Lu Feng. Now a dignified second-rank official of the imperial court actually knelt down in front of someone they had never seen before, and he was so respectful. Such an attitude was hard for them to accept for a while. You want to know who is stronger for those who practice martial arts? Whoever has the right to speak has more rights, and only the truly strong can make them surrender. It was only then that the soldiers began to be a little afraid. How could they still shake someone who was respected by even the dignified second-rank officials? You are a smart man, so let me tell you, your son violated my rules and I warned him, but since he is disobedient, he must be dealt with according to military orders. As a general, you should also understand what military orders are. Rushan, if you have anything to say about the way I just handled your son, now is your last chance. Lu Feng stared at him expressionlessly and told him that if he wanted to have a different opinion on the way he had just handled it, now was the last chance to express his opinion safely. If the general of the rear guard was behind his back, if any different opinions are spread everywhere and let Lu Feng know about it, then General Wei will get the same fate as his son. General Wei's face is trembling. No matter what his true mood is now, it is impossible to show it on his face. After all, it was his son who died. It was impossible for him not to feel the slightest sadness in his heart. But now facing Lu Feng, he did not dare to say a word. He knew in his heart that he did not have the strength to fight Lu Feng, although Lu Feng killed someone, he did it with justification. No one could find fault. He was not reasonable on the surface, so there was no way to confront Lu Feng. If he did it privately, then he would have to form gangs, but now that all the soldiers and horses in the world are under the control of Lu Feng, even if he wants to do something in private, as long as Lu Feng notices it, he can put his whole family to death for treason. General Wei fought hard. It took him a lifetime to get to where he is now. He couldn't risk the lives of his entire family and destroy his own future just for the death of one son. He didn't only have one son anyway. General Hirakawa joked, military orders are like mountains, this is an iron rule that everyone must abide by, even if I am now a second-rank official, as long as I violate the military regulations, even an unknown soldier can chop off my head, let alone what about the rest. General Wei clasped his fists and bowed. He had no opinion on this matter. He deliberately said this loudly to remind other people in the camp not to cause trouble for him. Especially Lin Fuxi, who brought him here. Actually, instead of telling him the whole story, he secretly concealed some details and added more fuel to the story when telling him, making him mistakenly believe that his son had died tragically. As a result, he came here angrily and saw that the root cause was not what Lin Fuxi said at all. In that case, General Wei will hate this Lin Fuxi to death. If he comes here and is questioned by Lu Feng, if he leaves a bad impression, what will happen to his future? Lin Fuxi is also shaking at this time. He has already realizing that he was not going to end well. Three Kingdoms, I have a job transfer palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 800. Lu Feng turned to look at the other people in the military camp. Everyone followed his gaze and knelt on the ground with their heads lowered. Now they didn't even dare to raise their heads. It was only then that these people finally knew how to write the word fear. They were trembling all over and waiting for their own ending. They could only hope that the person in front of them was not a murderer. These people have repeatedly disobeyed orders and even provoked me. What crime does General Wei think these people should be convicted of? Lu Feng looked at these people indifferently. He did not pronounce the verdict immediately. Instead, he changed the topic and handed over this right to General Wei, which surprised many people. At this moment, General Wei was sweating profusely. He had absolutely no intention of doing so. Thinking that Lu Feng had easily turned all the blame on himself, if he didn't answer well, it's hard to say how the soldiers under his command would look at him. According to the rules, these people committed the following crimes, and each of them was given 20 military sticks and a fine of 3 months. General Wei wiped the sweat from his forehead. Although he didn't want to answer the question, Lu Feng asked him to answer by name, so he could only follow the rules. But in fact, according to military regulations, these people were to be beheaded. Yes, the rule General Wei mentioned was the result of Lu Feng, as the party concerned, being willing to give a lighter sentence. As the leader of everyone, Lu Feng, before he said a lighter sentence, no one could change the punishment without authorization. General Wei, I obviously didn't trademark T want to offend anyone else by saying this. General Ping Chuan said, this military camp is a little special. Although most of the people are from the Forbidden Army, many of them are the children of important officials in the court, so they have always been in the suburbs of Beijing and have never been sent out. General Wei quickly asked Lu Feng to let him say the last sentence before he spoke. After Lu Feng nodded, he approached Lu Feng and lowered his voice and said the sentence, which also reminded Lu Feng that if he is in this military camp, if some people are killed, many ministers in the court will stand up and collectively oppose him. If the civil and military officials in the court unite to force Song Litsong to go to the palace, then Song Litsong, even as the emperor, must take into account the welfare of his ministers. Opinion, Lu Feng can only be blamed at that time. I am afraid it is not a consequence that one person can bear. You are worrying too much. If they did not violate military regulations, how could I kill them? Lu Feng suddenly changed his normal behavior and patted General Wei on the shoulder with a smile. These meaningful words made General Wei feel very uncomfortable. After all, the only one who was killed was his child, and his child was only used to scare the monkeys. Chicken. After already understanding that Lu Feng killed his son to establish his authority, General Wei's eyes were red, but he looked at Huang Zhong and Guan Yu behind Lu Feng, and finally could only return to his original position and kneel down without saying anything. Waiting for Lu Feng to speak. General Wei is considerate of his subordinates, and I can't ruin your good intentions. The whole army will each receive 20 military staffs, and the penalty will not be needed. However, since it is the favor that General Wei begs for, it is better to ask the general to give him a penalty of half a year. Lu Feng quickly issued his order, which made the soldiers on the side breathe a sigh of relief and feel frightened at the same time. Today's day was truly legendary, and they almost walked through the gate of hell to see the King of Hell. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Three Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 801. Don't just kneel down here in a daze. Save your military sticks for fighting after today's training. Everyone, stand still for me immediately. If you cannot form a formation within 10 breaths, I will personally send you to see the King of Hell. Lu Feng ignored the general guard who was kneeling in front of him. He didn't even give him an order to leave. He turned around and warned all the soldiers that if they could not do as he said, the outcome might not be as simple as it is now. These soldiers had seen Lu Feng's methods with their own eyes, and they were so frightened that they said nothing, and immediately the whole team finally showed the speed they had before they were not decadent. Soon, the team was already in line. It is a pity that these people were so decadent. It took too long. After the team was formed, the queue was not neat. They were only in a line when viewed sideways. They also did not wear their military uniforms. They were loose, like militiamen who had just united. Everyone immediately returned to the camp, put on their clothes, and lined up neatly within half a stick of incense. If I found that any square formation was not neat enough, then the entire formation would not be allowed to eat for 3 days. Looking at their loose appearance, Lu Feng knew that it was not an easy task to train them well. He immediately ordered them to return to the military camp. First, They should unify their clothes and pay attention to their appearance. He also gave strict orders. They will uniformly dress and line up by themselves. He will inspect them one by one. If one of the formations does not meet his requirements, the formation will be punished by starvation. These people were also serious soldiers back then. How could they not have received basic training? They must know how to form an orderly team. ETA Euro trademark s just that they have been degraded during this period, so they are so weak. As long as you give them a little time, it will be engraved in their memory. The things inside will not disappear easily. These soldiers clearly know what they should do, but they have always been unwilling to take it seriously, just because there is no one strong enough to restrain them. Now that Lu Feng is here, they must behave obedient. Yes. When these warriors answered, their voices were unified and full of energy. It seems that they have not been hollowed out in these years. If they train well, they can still return to their previous state, and maybe they can become better. Strong. Only General Wei kept kneeling there. For a moment, he didn't know whether he should get up or roll away like this. But those soldiers no longer had time to care about what General Wei was like. They didn't even have time to watch other people's jokes. No, if they cannot complete Lu Feng's request within the stipulated time, they will be like a clay Buddha crossing the river and unable to save themselves. These soldiers are all big and thick men, and they are asked to go without food for 3 days, although Lu Feng knows that they are not physically capable, they will die, but for these ancient soldiers, they thought they would die. No one would make fun of their own lives. After half a stick of incense, all of them finally recalled what they had done when they were marching into the army. With a proud look, with their heads held high, the uniform team finally took their first step, with uniform appearance and neat cues, as orderly as a regular army should be. 3 Kingdoms, I Have a Job Transfer Palace. Author, Strong Wine Burns the Heart. Chapter 802. Lu Feng took Guan Yu and Huang Zhong on a tour. These people finally changed their attitudes and took Lu Feng's orders very seriously. There was no problem with the queue. The captains of their respective teams also stood at the front to lead. It's just that the word fear is written in everyone's eyes. Their fear of Lu Feng has not completely subsided, and they are still recalling what happened not long ago. General Wei finally left at this time, but he left quietly without disturbing anyone. He was worried that if there was any big movement, Lu Feng would scold him. As a dignified second-grade official, it is really rare to withdraw from a place in such an embarrassing manner. You all cheer me up, start carrying your bags, pick up your weapons, and start running around the outskirts of Beijing. These soldiers all have a fixed rope bag to pack their luggage, so that there will be no confusion during long-distance marches, such as clothes and quilts. Such things must be packed and taken away. This is different from what is used in modern times. Televisioned anti-Japanese troops who arrived were carrying similar things. The last row is the reserve army responsible for transporting grain and grass. Relatively speaking, their tasks are much lighter. Under normal circumstances, they will not go to the battlefield because they are responsible for the food problem of the entire army. If there are not enough people in the front row, these reserve troops will also follow on the battlefield, so the training content is the same. The first thing Lu Feng needs to train is their physical strength. These people waste their time drinking and looking for women every day. What their physical fitness is like can be known by running a lap. The distance of running in a circle around the suburbs of Beijing is about 50 kilometers, and there are some uphill and downhill mountain roads in the middle, which are not flat. There are not many people who can run the whole distance, who can keep up with the running speed, and even fewer who are at the front. Lu Feng asked Guan Yu to light a stick of incense and start the timer. Guan Yu stayed where he was, waiting for him and Huang Zhong to ride on their horses and stare at the soldiers from the front and back rows. 50 dragon soldiers were interspersed in the middle, responsible for supervising these people not to cheat or be lazy. Because the supervision procedures were very complete, These soldiers of the Song dynasty did not dare to mess around and could only run along obediently, but everyone was complaining in their hearts. It had been a long time since they had run for such a long time, and in less than half an hour, they were already exhausted. 50 kilometers according to the physical strength of ordinary people, they can only walk less than 5 kilometers in an hour, and these people are soldiers, so Lu Feng has different requirements for them. If calculated as running distance in 1 hour, Lu Feng hopes that they can reach about 7 kilometers. After continuous training, he hopes that their time can become shorter. Only by constantly surpassing the limits of the human body can these soldiers of the Song dynasty become stronger. If they cannot break through the limits of the human body again and again, they will only be killed by others on the battlefield. After running for 3 hours, these people have not finished running 50 kilometers, but they can no longer hold on. Everyone wants to have a good rest. They are panting heavily. They really can't run anymore, so they slowly started walking. That's because Long Wuzu will not allow them to do this.